So we have some new information from the release of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Volume 6, and to put it simply, Sarada has been nerfed. Which is kinda crazy to say since she just awakened Mangekyo, but it is what it is, and we also have some other stuff to cover, so let's just get into it. Now the person on the cover is Sarada, and we knew this a few weeks ago, so that's not surprising, but they did add this space-like background on the cover, which is very cool. Now the text itself says Sarada awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, which she had unconsciously sealed. She begins her counterattack against the overwhelming power Subu. And by the way, Subu just means grain, which is referring to Ryu specifically. There's also some text on the back that says Yodo's life is taken by the pillar of the human god tree, Yodo's last words. Now Boruto faces off against the most powerful human god tree, Jura. So this pretty much confirms that Yodo is gone permanently, so just keep that in mind. With that said, this is where we get into the most interesting part. So we have this description of Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan ability, Ohirume. It says the name of Sarada's awakened Mangekyo Sharingan and its unique ability. She can create black spheres with a diameter ranging from 5 meters to 250 centimeters. And this part is important because it says that the maximum number she can produce is 4. So Sarada can only create 4 of those spheres at a given time. These spheres possess a gravitational pull disproportionate to their mass, which is kind of a buff in a sense because this means that even if it's very small, she can affect things of varying sizes and even power levels. So even though I said this kind of nerfs her powers, it also buffs it in a sense, or at least confirms what we already thought by reading the chapter. So this is interesting. But yes, she does this by generating powerful gravity. So if anyone was confused about what Sarada's power is, it's basically generating gravity. Now it also says that the strength of this gravity can be freely controlled by Sarada, and she can also cause the spheres themselves to explode like bombs. And this part I think is very important because we already knew that Sarada could control the strength of the gravity. She did this versus Ryu when he tried to escape using the clawgram, and she increased the gravity to restrict his hands from moving, so that was pretty obvious. But what we didn't know is whether this was an implosion or an explosion. And this confirms that yes, the spheres themselves explode like a bomb. Which, by the way, doesn't affect the strength of the attack because some people for some reason believe that an implosion is stronger than an explosion, but that isn't inherently true. But I will say that it would have been cooler if it was an implosion. Now it also goes on to say that only objects directly targeted and locked onto by Sarada's gaze are affected by the gravity emitted from the spheres. And this was confirmed in the very same chapter with Sarada having to look at Ryu to apply the gravity onto him, so this makes perfect sense. It also says if the target is a living being, Sarada herself cannot escape the influence of this gravity. Which in essence implies that when Sarada was lifted into the sky along with Ryu, this wasn't intentional. Which also kind of implies that if she does it to an object or let's say a person's powers, then she wouldn't be lifted into the sky. And I think this is also confirmed by the fact that when she did it to Ryu's sand, she wasn't levitating. So it makes sense. It also goes on to say that as a countermeasure, she skillfully controls each of the 4 spheres, manipulating the gravitational balance acting upon her own body, thereby enabling levitation. And then by moving together with the spheres, she can also achieve applications such as flying at high speed, similar to the Otsutsuki. Now there are 2 ways to interpret this, and it isn't really clear as yet because you could say that Sarada can just fly whenever she activates the spheres, which also implies that she can't just levitate without the spheres being active, which is a separate problem and we're going to get to that part soon. But this is a nerf in a sense that we initially thought that she could just levitate whenever she wants to, but now they're confirming that she needs the spheres in order to do so. And keeping this in mind, one interpretation is that she can activate the spheres and just fly whenever she wants to. But the second interpretation is that she needs to apply the gravity onto a living person in order to be affected by the gravity herself. Because they did say if a living thing is targeted, Sarada herself cannot escape the influence of this gravity, which is how she was able to fly initially. So that can be interpreted as Sarada needing to affect someone else with the gravity before she can fly herself, but it could also be the case that she can fly without affecting someone, while it's also true that if she does affect someone, she can't stop herself from flying. So there are two interpretations to work with, and I guess you guys can choose whichever one works for you. Now it then goes on to say, as for the drawbacks, the technique consumes a large amount of chakra, and like all Mangekyo Sharingan, the more it is used, the more Sarada's eyesight deteriorates, eventually leading to blindness. So for one, these spheres use a large amount of chakra, which is very limiting because Sarada doesn't have a lot of chakra to begin with. That has been an issue for Sarada for a very long time. She's very limited in the stamina capacity, which of course is very important because stamina creates chakra. So this person who can barely keep her Sharingan active for a very long time because of that issue also can't use her powers for a very long time because they also take a lot of chakra to use. And this is important because Sarada needs to activate the spheres to use something as basic as flight. So whereas Kawaki and Boruto and even Ada can casually perform this feat, Sarada needs to be draining her chakra to an unquantifiable amount to just imitate something so basic. Which is why this is a massive nerf. Which kind of explains why she fell unconscious the first time she used it. And we initially thought that, yeah, that typically happens when a new Mangekyo ability is awakened. It's just the strain from the first usage. But no, she legit has a problem using that ability consistently. And this also leads into the blindness aspect, and it does dispel some theories because many people thought, oh, Sarada awakened the Mangekyo because of love and everyone else awakened it because of hatred, which, by the way, doesn't make sense. All of the Mangekyo awakenings are rooted in love, so this wasn't a special occasion. But putting that aside, this does confirm that Sarada isn't going to have a perfect Mangekyo because she awakened it because of love, and she's going to have the same issues the other Uchihas had, which I think is the best decision. Now this of course leads into the how Sarada will be able to avoid going blind, and some believe that she's going to take Sasuke's eye and that will be enough, or take Hidari's Renegans and that will be okay. Or maybe she awakens the 100 healings jutsu and that saves her eyes. I will say that last one is the least plausible because people misunderstand how that jutsu works. It's not a healing jutsu per se. I mean, it does heal, but more so regenerates cells that are missing or damaged. And it does this by splitting existing cells. So the reason why it wouldn't work for the Mangekyo is because there isn't any cell damage in the eyes themselves. It's just a spiritual issue, a chakra issue, where the eyes lose their light. And we know this for certain because that is why a sibling can then take those very same eyes and implant them into their eye sockets and get them to work because they weren't physically damaged. And of course, 100 healings is for healing physical damages. So the idea of the Mangekyo being fixed by 100 healings just doesn't make sense based on how the jutsu is described. And I'm going to release a short on that later on, so look forward to that one. Now there's also the possibility of getting Madara's eyes if they did save them. Maybe Sasuke did in case his daughter needed them one day, because of course she was going to awaken Mangekyo at some point, so it would have been very smart for Sasuke to do that. And one could argue that it could work because Madara is blood related to Sasuke even to a deeper level by way of being his reincarnate, right? So if they wanted to play on that, they could, but of course it's just one of the possibilities, but we'll see. With that said, we also have Ikimoto's comments for the volume that says, the other day water leaked from the air conditioner, and since the copier was right under it, some important parts got wet and it completely stopped working. Because of this, I couldn't do some of my work, which was a real problem, especially at such a busy time. Nevertheless, I managed to draw the cover and this sketch for the volume, and I hope you enjoyed them. This may be a well-known truth, but it is still worth avoiding installing precision equipment directly under the air conditioner. So I guess Ikimoto learned his lesson. But yeah, that's it for today. And if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. Drop a like if you like the video and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.